Welcome everybody to Nialli's October webinar. We're thrilled to have Lisa Gibson here as our guest for this week. We'll just give attendees a couple of minutes to get onto the call here. Really excited about this topic. We're going to be diving all into the human side of lean construction and really going over why people are so important to the lean process, not just the processes themselves. You've got to invest in the human side of lean construction. So very excited to be diving into this topic today. Just as a reminder for everybody on the webinar as well, we do record this session. We'll have it up on our website probably today, later today, early tomorrow. And our past webinar episodes are recorded as well. You can check these out on our YouTube channel, and they're also posted on our events page as well. If you do have any questions on today's webinar, feel free to add those into the chat. We will probably, we'll definitely save time at the end for Q&A, but then if there's any really juicy questions there, we can also dive in depending on how things are progressing. So ask your questions away and either just do that in the chat or in the Q&A button there. Something else to mention as well, and this is kind of more for current Nialli customers or anybody exploring our app, we have launched a new web version of Nialli Visual Planner. This came out on September 23rd. Before the application was needed to be downloaded onto a Windows environment, we didn't have any support availability for Mac. This is now changed. It's now accessible in Chrome across any devices. And something we just rolled out as well as of October 17th is our field app. So this is now available on mobile devices, so Android or iOS, and on mobile, it will also work in Safari as well. So this is designed to be a more simplified planning view that you can give access to trades to if they'd like to get in and participate in the planning process. So if this is something you're interested in trying out, we haven't migrated all of our existing customers over to the new version yet, but we'd be happy to get you going on a sandbox account if you'd like to test it. Or if you're new and potentially interested in checking it out, definitely just reach out to our sales team or go to nialli.com/demo. So that's my shameless plug at the start. The rest will be on to Lisa and Alan to get into the meat of today's discussion on the people side of lean. So I'll welcome you both and let you both introduce yourselves.
That sounds good. Laura, I'm not the important one in this conversation. So welcome, Lisa, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Alan. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, right on. So why don't we start and give our audience a little bit of an idea of how you got into construction and your focus on the lean side of things and how you got to what you're doing today, and maybe a little bit about what you do with Colliers.
Absolutely. So I started on the owner side. I started the first quite a few years in the beginning of my career working on the owner side, and then moved to the contractor side, and then spent almost as much time on the contractor side, and then recently joined Colliers, where we are project management consultants and we represent owners. So for me, lean was something I only got introduced to on the contractor side. And I would say I was fortunate to work for a company that really wanted to try doing things differently. What we were doing wasn't always working. And when I say that, I mean the people side. And so how do we iron out those wrinkles to make the whole process better? And so lean offers so many wonderful things because it's about the people and respect for people. And so that was my first introduction to it. And that was 2015. And so then, I joined Carla Sapleski on the Lean Community of Practice and started some communities of practice within the company, started some education for myself and education for the teams, and looked where we could gain small wins in changing the culture.
Yeah, that's really neat. And you often hear people say respect for culture, and they nod and then they move on. And what I really am looking forward to today is how you've dug into it. And there's actually things you do to make that happen. And I think that's really neat. So why don't we start by, there's different kinds of respect. Why don't you just talk about sort of your working definition that guides how you take on respect, the respect culture, we'll call it for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in terms of lean, I think it's really important to calibrate. When we say the word respect, I think a lot of us would say, well, of course we know what that means. Everyone knows
Right.
what respect means, but I don't think we should ever assume. I think we should have
Mm,
that conversation about what does it mean to you and what does it mean to me. And I mean, it's to me, it's quite simple. It's really valuing others. It's honoring others. It's recognizing the value they bring in their differences and their backgrounds, their education, their experiences, and using that as a positive. That's a real positive about the people that you work with, and that's respect.
mm. That's really helpful. So let's go to the job site now. It's enough to, talk about it. Like, what kind of practices do you use to, I'll just say, improve that understanding of respect? Um, the culture of it. Like, how do you go into a team? What type of things do you do? Might be helpful for people to hear that if they want to start to pursue this area.
Well, I am often reminded of even as a child when we were all taught about the golden rule, which I think you could even expand to the platinum rule now. But this, do unto others, treat others as you want to be
Mm,
treated. This turning your focus inwards and then turning it outwards, really understanding what other people need, what you need in terms of how we treat people. And then the platinum rule, I mean, that takes it a bit further and says, not only do I treat others the way that they want to that I want to be treated, I treat them the way they want to be treated. So it puts onus on myself to understand the people that I'm working with, to really understand them and what they need and the value they bring and the experience they bring. So, I mean, I think about a story in the past where I've had people on my team. I've had someone on my team who will say to me, it just feels adversarial. I just can't make a connection with this person, whether it's a contractor and an owner or a trade partner and a contractor. And we just seem to be so focused on things that are slightly different that we can't agree. We can't be in harmony. And so I've often said, take that person away from the project, away from the job site, and go and just have a coffee with them as a human
mm,
and find one thing that you have in common. Maybe your kids both play hockey. Maybe you both love, museums or, Tom Selleck movies. I don't know. There's something, you'll have something. And if you can find that common thread, it immediately disarms you to that person's intentions because, and I have to remind myself this as well, but people's intentions are good. I mean, 99.9% of the time, people's intentions are good. I'm going to say nobody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to go to work today and do a terrible job and upset everybody around me. That's not
that's right.
that's not how we're wired. But we
Yeah.
often think that about people. We often go to this negative bias, negative assumptions place. So I think if we really stop and take a moment to look and understand people, that's a huge thing. It's so simple too to take a moment to do that. A couple of other things I'd mention is things like a Kanban board. So setting up, like as a team, putting together a Kanban board so that you can all see the things that have to get done, but you can also see what other people are working on. So you have a bit more of an understanding of how busy or how occupied the people you're working with are. Because again, these are all things we make assumptions about.
Right. And do you go in and, have like retrospectives? Do you sense that things aren't going quite right? Do you use some kind of techniques to pull out, to bring the culture back to, as you say, the 99.9% intentions of people?
Yeah, I think lessons learned are really important,
Mm,
and sharing those lessons learned and having like a postmortem at the end of a project and including as many people as you can in terms of partners in that project. So you get as many perspectives and take that as a learning opportunity and share what you learn. I think that's a really important practice. And I know lots of companies do this. Sometimes I think we lose a bit in the sharing and amplifying that message and how we then carry that forward to our next project. Another one is the plus delta. So if you've ever come to our lean communities of practice, our lean coffees, we do a plus delta at the end where it's the whole group comes together and what worked really well and what should we change? What should we stop doing, start doing, do more of, do less of? Where do you want to see things, moving? And just doing those quick check-ins, I mean, you could do a plus delta with yourself at the end of the day and say to yourself, like, what really worked well for me today? And what do I want to do differently next time? But one of the general contractors I worked for, we tried this as an experiment at the end of a pursuit, is we would bring everyone together. It was 5 minutes. End of the pursuit. Let's just have a quick conversation about what worked and what we want to do differently next time. And we would include, we were still getting some pricing from fax. So we included, the receptionist because she was part of receiving things. Like we pulled in everybody who had any part of that process. And then we would do this quick 5-minute plus delta. And then out of that, we would pull out something that we want to try differently next time. Based on this, what's one thing that we should try doing differently? And then you're just moving that needle. It's just that, creating that space of safety for people to put out ideas and for people to be okay with suggesting things and trying things. And they don't always work, and that's okay. That's how you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that whole permission to try things, err on the side of doing, learn from mistakes. I mean, it has to be a way that everybody agrees to, I would imagine.
Yes. And I think, Alan, like the leadership, whatever that means in your company, I think the leadership has a crucial part to play in this culture and this respect for people piece. Because if we're not living it, then no one else will do it. And I've been places where I've seen, that great framed statement on the wall that says, we're all about people and blah, blah, blah. But then people don't live it and the leadership doesn't live it. And if that's not happening, then no one's going to take that chance. No one will feel safe.
Yeah, and leadership training is another topic, but certainly resonates with, what we hear out in the field. Sometimes, you probably heard the saying, if we both have the same idea, one of us isn't needed, which it becomes a natural conflict. I have an idea, you have an idea, and they're different. Um, Can you just talk a little bit about conflict in a way of that it's not a fight, it's important, and respect, trust and conflict, how they're, in real projects, how they interplay, and how they're managed?
Yeah, I do think the nature of design and construction is there's a lot of big personalities. We all have egos. I mean, I am not any exception to this. We all want to be part of the solution. We all want our ideas to be chosen, successful. Nobody wants to have anything that doesn't work or goes wrong. So there's two things I would say, maybe three things. One is we have to remember that this is not about right and wrong, and it's the ego piece that we have to park, which is way easier said than done.
Right.
Yeah, if you've ever had your ego bruised, yeah.
Yes.
But I mean that's part of the process, right? The other thing is we have to make sure we're asking the right people. We're pulling the right people into our discussions. And so when we have things like conflict or challenges on a project, are we asking the right people? And that's not necessarily a seniority thing. That might be the trade person. That I've even seen, if you have like an intern student or a new hire who's fresh to
Yeah.
your organization. I've said this to students at SAIT when they say, well, I'm going to be a brand new person in this company. What value do I have to offer? I'm just there to learn. And I think that's so wrong. I think the idea that you come in with fresh eyes and fresh perspective. I come in with about 37, bags of luggage that I'm carrying around from all of the years of experience, which sometimes means I can't see things.
Mm,
So I think that if we really embrace those different people that are part of our projects and make sure we're asking the right people for their ideas, their solutions, or even to vet our ideas, that's really important. And making sure that we have the right people in the conversation too, in terms of who's going to use that space after, or who's going to have to maintain that space after. Do we have all the right people there? And that sometimes that lowers that ego a little bit, because we recognize that we can't have all the answers. We shouldn't,
yeah.
actually.
And that's a nice point, and it's part of the lean principle of adding value. And I would suggest, it's a different kind of respect. I'm going to respect your ideas. It just might add value, which is different than being nice and safe and things like that. It's respecting that everybody, you know, could be smarter than me. That whole
Yeah,
idea is kind of
I
interesting.
think I think you should actually frame it up that everyone in that room is smarter than you about
Mm,
something.
okay, that's true. Yeah, good point.
Everybody is.
So let's move to the industry in general. I think, it's hard for anybody to disagree that people aren't, people matter. Is the industry um, changing? Like, is there kind of a move that you've seen? I think you said, since about 2015, you've been working in this area. Have things changed, or what's the barometer that you're seeing out in the industry generally?
Yeah, I think things are changing. And the reason why I think things are changing, there would be a couple of really key factors, is I think you're seeing a more diverse workforce. So I think we're
Okay.
seeing that we're pulling in more diverse people into our industry. The other thing is I'm seeing this vulnerability and openness to talk about things like psychological safety and mental health and wellness.
Mm,
And I even look at what Jeremy's doing at the Calgary Construction Association with I always get the name wrong, toolbox talks, that mental health and wellness program, and now they're turning it into an app. And
okay.
if I think back, Alan, to like 2015 and earlier, no one talked about psychological safety,
Mm, true.
like mental health and wellness, like, diversity on site, all of the different kinds of groups that we would have on site and different kinds of things they might need. I wasn't hearing those conversations, certainly not
Right.
often. So these are a couple of the things that I think are changing. And I think the face of leadership is changing in construction, which is sort of part of that barometer of change. And then, I mean, the fact that we're having this discussion to me
Mm,
is a measure of change. Our lean community of practice in Calgary is thriving. I think the last one we had 50 people.
wow.
And these are people who come for an hour and a half. They all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds of knowledge about lean, and they come to learn and network and foster community. And many of them come, I'm not going to say on their own time, because they're employed, or it's, sort of part of their work day. But I know for myself, like if you come to something like that, the things that you would have done during that time, you're having to do at a different time. So you're coming because you really want to be there and it's important to you.
Right. That's interesting. Glenn Ballard, we had a webinar with him as a guest, and his main topic was relational contracts versus transactional contracts. Now, do you want to, make a comment on that? I mean, he said there was, a shift. What are you seeing in that area?
Yeah, I would agree there's definitely a shift to more collaborative contracts, which maybe the market and sort of the nature of the kind of things that need to happen and how that project can be executed better. Not even thinking about people, but thinking about the pure mechanics of a contract could be partly driving it. I'm going to give Carla Sapleski a plug. So Carla, I'm so fortunate that I get to work with Carla now at Colliers Project Leaders, and she looks after our Lean and IPD group. But she said that the interest in collaborative contracts and those lean tools that team is teaching and using and bringing into projects is off the charts. Like, people are interested. And I see it too. The number of clients that reach out to me and say, oh, we want to learn more about what that group does and collaborative contracts. I also know there's some statistics, which I don't have handy, which say that collaborative contracts are on the rise, just when they gather the pure data on what kind of contracts people are choosing. And then the other thing I've heard and experienced this a bit through the Canadian Construction Association is people who are still using, say, a CCDC2 and that hard bid approach, they still want to know, how do we pull this kind of stuff into that kind of contract? Like, how do we still make it a great place and a great experience for all of the people who are involved in this project, which I do think is possible. I don't think it's quite as intuitive perhaps, or might take a little bit more effort in a different way. But I think we can still foster that core of respect for people and collaboration, even in that kind of a contract.
Right. Interesting. You mentioned interns and, attracting youth to construction, and, that's going to be intimidating because there's the gruff super that's going to be hard on me, that kind of thing. Like, are the expectations of sort of I'll just call them the um, young workers coming into the industry, are they different? Like, are they a different type of
Expectations.
expectations? Yeah, talk about that, what you see.
Yeah, I do think there's a difference in the expectations, and interesting because I'm going to industry night for the School of Engineering tonight as
Okay,
myself and a few folks from Colliers to just talk to the students about who we are, what we do,
nice.
and get them excited about Colliers as a potential employer.
Okay.
Um, so yes, and I've also been involved in some interviewing lately. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things, like we talk about the job that they'll do. They're very interested in understanding the mechanics of the job, but they're just as interested in understanding about the culture of the company. They're interested in understanding about, social responsibility. They're interested in understanding about different committees that, like, we have a couple of committees here. Like, one is a fun committee that just brings people together and really creates community. We have one that's based on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we have one that's on corporate responsibility. So volunteering, we all went and ran the Run for the Cure. And that, combined with the fact that we have a hybrid work arrangement, so people can really figure out what works best for them, how they are most productive and most fulfilled while working best for the needs of the company. Those are the things that are really important to people because they contribute to that culture. And it's how they find a place that matches them and their values. And we talk about that just as much as we talk about the day-to-day of the job.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
speaking of day to day, we've heard, how the job site trailer or the big room, we've had customers say, I want it to be a destination that when people go there, they know how to behave. Are there things, I'll call it artifacts or technologies or things that you suggest that someone should have in their planning room or job site trailer, whatever they're using? Are there like practical things that people can say, oh yeah, maybe we should do a little bit of that? Like, what are you promoting there?
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind. So one is, you just can't escape the good old fashioned, people skills and relationship skills. You can't bypass that with any technology or even any level of fancy and sophisticated education. It still is about people. And sometimes you have to just work through tricky conversations to figure out where your alignment is or who that person is, or even help people understand by what they're doing is maybe not creating a sort of respectful and safe environment for people. You reminded me before actually of a story that I wanted to tell. So I was on a project, and the nature of my role over the last few years, certainly currently at Colliers, is kind of supporting the team, but the team is doing, the day in and day out of the project. And I am supporting as needed and where needed. And so there was a project where the superintendent seemed really, I'm going to say, irritated by the fact that we had somebody who needed to come and tour the site on a weekly basis for a report that we had to write. And he had to tour us because of the way they did their safety protocols. And we didn't want to make this escalate into something. We need to be collaborative with this person. And so I said to the project manager and the rest of the team, let's find out what this superintendent likes. Like if he has a favorite restaurant or a meal or a drink, like a something, right? So we found out through a little bit of sleuthing that he loves Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is his drink, right? Doesn't drink coffee. And so I said to the person who was going to site the next time, I said, take one of the, like either like the box of the 12 cans or like the 6-pack of the 1-liter bottles, like take him a supply of Mountain Dew. Surprise him. Like he doesn't know that we figured this out about him.
Yeah.
And that little gesture made a world of difference. And it was meant as this heartfelt gesture of like, we know this is something you like. We took the time to figure you out a little bit and took the time to go and get this for you. And it started to create more of a bridge there.
Yeah, it was a
So I
human
don't
thing.
think you can't escape those kinds of things. And those I think are the things that are hard. They're hard for everybody. Myself included sometimes to figure them out, and then they take time, which we all feel like we don't have. And sometimes they might be uncomfortable. But those are really important, priceless. The other thing I want to say is I have experienced where the team doesn't really understand those fundamentals of lean, or there isn't necessarily that foundational respect for people in place on a project. There's some struggling in that area. And then someone might swoop in with a technology before they take the time to just weave that foundation in place first. And you can't do that and have success, in my opinion. You need to really take the time to do the grassroots stuff first. Just like if you have a technology that works amazingly, like a Nialli technology, for example, but then let's say you all of a sudden have your technology break down and things stop working, then people have to know how to pick up pens and papers and post-it notes and stick stuff on the wall and just have a good old conversation about it.
Right.
And sometimes we jump to technology before we do that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Someone can go buy technology, but it's pretty hard to buy behavior,
Yes.
our culture. And like, do you offer, like, say, General GC says, hey, look, we want all our supers to take a course with you because we're really interested in, that's, people matters kind of thing. Like, do you run leadership training? Because you mentioned earlier that the leadership's really important in this scheme.
Colliers has a ton of leadership training. So
Okay.
as a company, very invested in that, which speaks to that priority. And then just on a separate note, a colleague of mine who is also at Colliers, coincidentally, we started doing this about 5 or 6 years ago, is talking about this to students at SAIT in the School of Construction,
Right.
to help them really think about these skills and figure out for themselves ways in which they could start to tap into them or have some more awareness. Because we would say to them, your technical skills, you're all equal, you're all perceived as equal. But these people skills, human skills, soft skills, whatever you want to call them, that's the differentiator.
Yeah, it sure can be. Um, do you have any other stories? Like, I want to hear a tough story where, you know, you went home racking your brain. I can't seem to turn this team. Like, do you have any tough stories, and maybe, what you did? I'm sure over the years, everything wasn't super, super rosy. So tell us about a
Yeah,
problem
for sure.
situation. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it, I think this is sort of a hard, this is becomes one of those sort of hard look in the mirror moments where
Right.
there was a project and it just seemed like no one could get along and things were going wrong.
Right.
And when I spoke to one of the leads for one of the other parts of the team about it, I got some feedback that was hard to hear. I got some
Mm.
feedback that said, you know what, Lisa, sometimes you're not listening like you should be. And
Oh, wow.
sometimes we feel like you are assuming the worst of us. And we feel like sometimes, you might cut someone off and not let them finish their sentence. And we get it, you're frustrated, and we both had feedback like that for each other. But yeah, it's moments like that where I stop and have to remind myself, because you have to be kind to yourself, which
Mm.
is not always easy. And I say that from experience. I can be just as critical of myself, but you have to stop and sort of think, you know what? I need some distance here. I need to sort of just stop and reflect on this. I need to hear what they're saying because what they're saying is true, and I need to make a change.
Mm.
And just like they needed to go away and do the same thing. So to be able to have those candid moments
Right.
and be able to accept feedback. So feedback, if you can't accept it, that's going to make things worse. But yeah,
Yeah. I
so
really
so
appreciate that honest,
yeah,
honest comment. Much appreciated, Lisa. I think we should move to some questions that we might have. I don't know if Laura, if you want to grab them for us.
Yeah, sure. I actually see a good one in the chat right now, and this is just in the context of lean. What are the real indicators of respect on a project? Like, how do you tell the
Ooh,
difference between the surface level sort of general respect versus like, okay, this team genuinely respects each other and they're willing to put the legwork in to make this work?
great question. Wow.
yeah. I think you see it in how people behave, and it's things like, how do people challenge each other? I
Mm.
think you see it in things like, people talk about the meeting after the meeting. So in the meeting, and I was in a meeting not long ago where at the end of the meeting, it's like, oh, does anyone have anything to add, any feedback, any questions, comments? Crickets, nothing.
Mm.
That to me is an indication that there's probably not as much trust as you need in that room.
Mm.
And then if you watch how people at the end of a meeting, how they socially interact, or if people come a bit early because they like to catch up with the people they work with, do they know a bit about each other? Like, are they asking how their weekend was? Do they remember they went on a trip somewhere? Some of those little indicators will tell you.
Mm. Yeah, that's really neat observations. I know a couple of friends have been on professional sports teams, and they kind of say most of the teams are pretty equal, but it's the dressing room, and it's
Yes,
exactly what you're talking about. That it's not just I'm going there and I'm going to put a little shell around me and do my thing. There's actually a genuine interest in each other, and that's culture, right?
exactly. Yeah. How well do people really know each other? How do they
Hmm,
respond to things? Are people
interesting.
bringing up concerns? Or is, when there's a concern raised, is everyone just like quiet about it? No one says anything, or people get angry maybe. It's really watching those
Hmm.
interactions or even micro expressions that people have.
Oh, interesting. So what else do we have?
So far, that's it on questions, but please feel free, everyone, to put your questions for Lisa in the chat. I think this is an excellent topic, and there's lots of ways we could segue this discussion, so don't be
Yeah,
shy.
and I think I'd like to mention a couple of other things, like if people are thinking about how they expand their horizons. One thing I found really helpful is connecting with people who are from a completely different industry and appear on the surface to have nothing in common with me. You know how they
Hmm.
say on LinkedIn, I've heard this before, people will look at someone who reaches out to them and they'll be like, oh, we have lots of connections in common, so I should connect with this person. I sometimes do the opposite. We have no connections in common. Perfect, let's connect. And that was one of the
Nice.
ways that I kept a bit of sanity during COVID is connecting with people from all over the world who were about as different as you could get. And that really opens your eyes to other people's experience.
It's really interesting. Are there any like resources or authors or materials that people can sort of dive into to start to, perhaps embrace some of the journey that, you've clearly, got your head around? Where can they start?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Paul Akers, if you don't know Paul Akers, if you're not reading or listening to his book 2 Second Lean or his other kind of iterations along the same vein, he's amazing. And I'm going to say he's amazing for many reasons. To me, he is a true lean spirit. So one of my colleagues here, we have a mistake proofing workshop that we created. And so as part of that mistake proofing workshop, we wanted to use a little snippet from Paul Akers. He has a great video on mistake proofing that we want to use. So I reached out to him. I don't really know Paul, and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. Could I use your video in my workshop? And he said, absolutely. He said, anything that furthers this important topic, 100% supportive of.
Nice.
And to me, that's part of this community or this mindset that I love, is it's all about this rising tides. It's all about, if we all make each other better, then everything is better. It's not competitive. I mean, it's always a little bit competitive, but it really is about everybody making each other better.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's
Paul
awesome.
Akers for sure. And then the Lean Construction blog. If you're not familiar with that group, they have amazing articles. They do free webinars monthly or every 6 weeks, something like that. Fantastic.
Yeah, I noticed they had a lot on their site about this topic, people and culture,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Dwan's really committed to that world for sure.
Well, I mean,
And
Alan, you can do everything else, but if you somehow miss on the culture, and sometimes you start well and then something happens and it goes a bit sideways, that it's so important. Like I feel like it can make or break what you're
yeah,
doing if it's
yeah,
not
and
checked.
exactly. And I've used the term as if people matter, and they totally do. Um, and Laura's posted a couple things into the chat,
Yeah,
folks. You want to
Just the
grab.
links to, if you would like those resources, Paul Akers' book, and a link to the Lean Construction blog as well.
yeah.
I'm still waiting for a really hard question from somebody, Lisa.
Me too. Me too. I don't even have my own hard question. I was trying to.
You're going to ask me? No.
No, I'm not even prepared for that. Like, shoot, I should have thought more.
I
Um,
don't think so. I think some of your insights are just fantastic, and I love the your passion and commitment to the topic. It's infectious for sure, and I hope some of our audience is picking up on that, and obviously they could probably reach out to you. Speaking of connecting to people that you're not
yeah, of
connected
course.
to.
Yeah,
Like that would be really good.
absolutely.
'Cause we believe
Absolutely.
also in the rising tide raises all ships, and why wouldn't we be committed to making things better at the job site? You mentioned the psychological safety. Like there's incredibly scary numbers about mental health in the industry generally, um,
Yes.
and without sort of putting a downer on it, just, people harming themselves, psychological safety, even more than being safe with your ladder, kind of thing is even a bigger issue. So I don't know if you want to talk about that. Do you do anything, in that regard?
So there's some great training in terms of psychological safety. It's called upstander training, and I
Okay.
have to, yeah, I forget the group that offers it. It's free training, and being an upstander is not just. I mean, I think you could use the word active bystander as well, but being an upstander is all about stepping in and advocating for others, making sure that if things are going wrong for others in terms of bullying and psychological safety, that you are doing something. And there's different ways you can do it because you have to make sure you're also safe. But whether it's kind of distracting the situation, I'm not going to remember all five, but distracting the situation, or you document it, or you check in with them afterwards, or you speak up and you say, hey, we don't talk like that. here.
Right.
That's just not how we talk to each other. So
Mm.
let's stop that. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
which isn't always the right solution, but it's good because it gives you some strategies to deal with those situations. Because I'm not going to say those things are easy. This whole
Mm.
psychological safety piece is not easy, right? It's I've been in situations, I know it's not easy. So it's a great resource if you want to have some strategies in your back pocket to be thinking about, and know that just because you didn't say something in the moment, that's okay. There's other ways that you can still advocate and support that person who needs your support.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of Maslow's hierarchy and you think of that level of, security. I mean, that it's exactly what you're pointing to. It's just part of
Yeah.
our needs as humans.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, can you imagine like going somewhere every day where you don't feel, safe and protected, right?
oh yeah, and there seems to be, I mean, I've seen this and heard this from nephews and others in the industry, and it's like the tricks that get played on them as a young person on the, just to make them feel stupid,
Yeah.
on the job site. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, why? It's like it's the rite of passage or something. I don't know. Sort of
Yeah,
odd.
exactly. Well, I mean, kids in particular, I have two teenagers. They can be
Hmm.
cruel. They can be really cruel to each other. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
maybe adults aren't much better. I don't know. Or
yeah, well,
have the capacity. We have the capacity to be so kind and compassionate and empathetic. And I think
right.
we just need to remind ourselves of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question in the chat. What is the contact information for Colliers Project Leader? And I assume that's you. Are you okay, if we put your email into the chat for people? Like we don't want to overload you with people giving you a shout, but
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's okay though. I mean,
okay,
you can find me on LinkedIn, and if you put my
okay,
email, that's fine too. Yeah.
all
Yeah,
right,
and
I'll
like I
put your
said,
LinkedIn and I can send that individual a note after the call as well with your email.
perfect.
So, but
yeah,
yeah,
Perfect.
encourage folks to
linked
connect on LinkedIn with Lisa. So,
Yeah,
LinkedIn's a good idea.
absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, and I really encourage people to come to our lean community of practice and check it out. It's an amazing group. And these are the kinds of things that we talk about. We just talked about this at BuildX with a panel of folks from that lean community of practice. And it's a safe place where you can have conversations. And Alan, I have to tell you, when we did our Plus Delta at the last Lean Community of Practice, one of the pluses someone said is they felt safe saying what
Wow.
was kind of on their heart and on their mind.
Yeah, I have attended. I don't know. I haven't attended for a while. Maybe the coffee wasn't good enough. I'm not
I
sure
heard the
then, but
coffee's terrible. I don't drink it. Don't come for the
anyways,
coffee.
I think we're almost at time, Lisa, and I think this has just been a real pleasure, and I'm sure for the audience as well, and hearing some of your thoughts. So if you have any closing comments, or Laura, if you have anything, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
I'm going to close with a couple of comments,
Okay.
a couple of things I've said, some I haven't said. So this is a lifelong journey, whether it's lean or specifically the respect for people piece. This is a lifelong journey. And I am reminded of this. I am humbled by this on many occasions, as we all are just human. And so as you're on this journey, you have to be kind to yourself and kind to others. But yeah, we're just human. And if you just keep that intention of respecting people and pulling the value out of all the people around you and keep reminding yourself of that, people have good intentions. We all want things to go well and be successful for everyone involved. I think that those are the mantras that we all just need to keep saying to ourselves. And cut yourself some slack sometimes, and you just course correct, right? That's what Paul Akers will tell you. There's always 2 seconds you can find to save yourself somewhere in there. You can try doing something a little bit different when it's not working.
Right.
amazing. And
Neat.
actually, we did get one last minute question in here. Sorry to interrupt, but this is actually a pretty good question. And it's just around how do you get owners more interested in participating in some of the lean community of practice stuff? Like, have you seen anything that's working? Because this individual says they're kind of the only owner in their local community that's been coming out to meetings, and they're just wondering if there's anything that they can do to get more of them out.
So that's for sure a struggle point. Like that's I would say the smallest represented group that we have. And I think there's different things. I think there's like just tapping them on the shoulder and bringing them as a guest. I think pulling them along and challenging them to come with you. I think if there's owners who have had maybe an experience that didn't feel as good as it should have on a project, this is maybe a refresh moment for them to hear that there's lots of people out there who want these projects to go differently. We all want to be, I use the word friends, it's not quite the right word, but we all want to be friends at the end. We want to be friends at the beginning and friends at the end. We want to look forward to working together on the next one. And I think if people understood that that's some of the stuff that we're talking about, the owners would be interested. And I know on the collaborative contracting side, that's who is really sparking that interest. It is owners. Owners are the ones who are putting up their hand and saying, we want to be more involved. We want to ensure we get what we want and what we need. And a collaborative contract is a way to do that. And that, they really do respect all of those different partners on those projects. And I think that more traditional approach to construction doesn't always allow them to have that kind of human role in the project. And so I think when they understand that stuff and they want to learn more about it, we can pull them into our community of practice. So we have had a bit of luck with that.
And the IPD community is definitely continuing to grow. I know there's a conference happening next week in Toronto, and they've sold out this year. So we're seeing some momentum on that side that I think is new and exciting. So hopefully we can get some of those owners out to local community of practices as well.
And Laura, that's another actually resource that's worth mentioning is the IPDA, because they do, like, even if you're not a member, they do some great webinars. If you're a member, they have amazing resources for learning, plus webinars you get access to that you don't if you're not a member. But it's a wonderful resource to check out. And if you look at the people who are on the board, those are the people you want to connect to, you want to watch what they're doing. And this just opens up conversations with owners, back to owners again.
Right on. Well, Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm not sure if I should say this, but I'm looking forward to your book. Just to give you something else to do, you too. That's perfect. So thank you so much. It's been absolute pleasure and an honor speaking with you. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Right on. So Laura, I don't know if you have any final notes, but I think we're pretty much at the end here.
No, we'll wrap it up and we'll have the recording shared out to everybody shortly.
Wonderful. Thanks to everyone for coming. Yeah, have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks everybody.